12th, 2024 meeting of the Select Board. I'm Beth Cassavant. I'm the chair. We'll take a moment just to go around and introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Teresa Flynn.
Michelle Conlon.
John Samia.
Carlos Garcia.
I'm Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager.
I'm Justin Dobson, Assistant to Town Manager.
First item on our agenda is to approve the bills, payrolls, and warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Second item is to review and act to approve the minutes of the February 6th, 2024 workshop, the February 27th, 2024 meeting, and the March 5th, 2024 workshop.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 3 is announcements and reports. I have 2 this evening. So the first is that we need some town meeting members. So numerous town meeting member precincts have fewer candidates than the available number of positions. Interested residents are encouraged to run to serve as town meeting members. So to pull nomination papers, you would visit the town clerk's office, and to be eligible for election, you would just need to gather 10 signatures from registered voters in your precinct, and your papers are due by March 19th, which is a week from tonight. And I will just add, you would count as your own signature counts towards your 10, but I would always recommend that people get more than 10 in the event that you accidentally pick up someone who maybe isn't a registered voter or isn't actually in your precinct. But when you do visit the town clerk's office, you will get a list of the streets that are in your precinct, and then you'd be able to know, where to go to get some signatures. It's very easy, and it's really impactful. Town meeting is a legislative body for the community, and a lot of the decisions that affect our community years and years into the future are traced back to town meeting action. So I would encourage people to get involved, and it's a great way to understand how your local government works and really have a voice. The second is that we have a couple of vacancies, available positions on the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Shrewsbury Cultural Council. So the deadline to apply for those is this Friday at noon. If you're interested, we just would need a letter of interest. There's an online application on the town website, or you could send it to the office of the Select Board at Town Hall. So I'll pause there to see if there's any other announcements or reports from board members this evening.
Do not.
All right. So that brings us to the town manager's report. Mr. Mizikar.
Good evening, board members. I wanted to provide the board an update on our ongoing capital improvement planning work, which we focus a little bit more on, bringing a final plan to the board as part of the budget process for our annual capital improvement plan, and then some more long-range capital improvement work that we've been doing over the last few months. Related to that, before I get into the direct capital improvement plan, I just wanted to let the board know that, as we talked about earlier this calendar year, we continue to be on track to make revised recommendations to you for the American Rescue Plan Act expenditure plan. We will bring a revised plan back to you for your consideration at your April 9th meeting. Our development of this plan takes into consideration the program's timing constraints of expenditures or contracts prior to the end of the calendar year, and also programmatic and capital improvement needs of the community. So we'll be back to the board in 1 month with that. The ARPA expenditure plan will also provide, our recommendations will also include much needed alternative funding source options for your consideration for one-time investments in both the municipal and school budgets. So we want to take advantage of this opportunity to use the ARPA funds and continue to keep the burden off the tax rate where we can. We will be prepared to share our detailed recommendations for the FY25 General Capital Improvement Plan with the board at your next meeting, which is March 26th. And if possible, I'd like to talk in more detail on the 26th about some work that we've been doing across all departments, which includes longer range capital improvements for critical infrastructure and buildings. We've taken a longer horizon look at both capital replacement and renovation and general improvement needs across town and school properties. And we would like to set forth a conversation with the board about a potential path for your consideration for these projects. So as always, that path will include our best intents to continue to mitigate taxpayer impacts while meeting these critical needs across all town and school projects. So look forward to kind of more in-depth conversations with the board over the next few meetings on capital improvement planning.
Thank you. questions, comments? All right. So we're going to move on to item number 5, which is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31 to offer citizens the opportunity to provide public comments during Select Board meetings on matters within the board's authority. No one has signed up for public comment this evening, but in the future, if someone wishes to address the board, we just encourage you to please let us know the Monday before our meeting by noontime so that we can have you on the agenda. And that brings us to our meetings. And item number 6 is an update from the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. You know, we have a few members here, our chair and our vice chair. I'd invite you up to the table and ask you to just introduce yourself for people at home who are watching.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Dos Santos Mesquita, and I am the chair of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee.
I'm Bindu Gupta. I'm the co-chair on the same committee.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So part of the charge of your committee is to report back to the select board a couple of times a year, just so that we sort of get a feel for what you're doing. And so we look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight.
Okay, so this is our first update. We are a new committee. This was our first year. We had our first public meeting on January 9th of 2023. We are made up of 7 members. The members that are not with us tonight include Holly Miller-Shank, who's our clerk, and then members Adiola Mabene, Freddie Koss, and Pankaj Adval, and our student representative from Shrewsbury High, Kubra Muhammadi. So in terms of what we did last year, we spent a lot of time trying to participate in activities and events that were already happening in the town. So we participated in the Spirit of Shrewsbury event. We also participated in the Multicultural Festival held by the Senior Center, just to increase awareness that we exist and that we are here to try and do some things. So in terms of what we have accomplished, last June, we recommended a land acknowledgement statement that was authored by the Shrewsbury Public Library to be adopted town-wide. We also included a multicultural calendar on the town website. And we held our first community forum this February on the focus was having difficult conversations, helping kids and adults with strategies to have difficult conversations with people that have different points of view from you. And that went well. And independently, members have been also participating in different meetings. So a couple of members provided personal feedback to the district, the school district improvement plan. And I know the Affordable Housing Trust as well. Let's see. In terms of future planning, we have another roundtable that's scheduled for April. It's a community roundtable that we are asking for members of the community to attend and help us set a fall agenda. So in terms of what would they like to see the diversity, the EIB committee do, and how can we best serve the town of Shrewsbury. We also have a logo contest that we have opened right now that I think will conclude next month. And then in terms of future planning for what we have right now, we are planning to hold the first Juneteenth event for the town of Shrewsbury. I believe June 20th is our tentative date right now. And then also the first Pride event for the town of Shrewsbury for the month of June as well. And
Do you want to tell a little bit about what's your Juneteenth event? I mean, I have the pleasure of sitting in on your meetings, so I know that you have something really special planned. So this is your opportunity to let the community know.
Sure. Yeah, so for the Juneteenth event, what we want to do is invite food trucks to Shrewsbury, different Black-owned businesses, and maybe some performers, some vendors, and just different people that can participate with that and bring that event to Shrewsbury.
I know you've been working with the Recreation Department. I'm making it happen.
Correct, for both events, for Juneteenth and the Pride event, we have been working with Parks and Rec to get things going.
Are there any questions from board members?
Do you,
Of course.
do you have a date for the Pride event?
We don't yet, because I think that depends on a couple of other details.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have some meetings ready to go, so we'll progress soon, I guess.
Any questions or comments?
I was just going to quickly ask if, okay, how you feel. Do you feel the community at large is aware of you and these initiatives and getting involved, or do you think that we're still sort of building up the awareness of the DEIB?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're still trying to get the word out there that we exist and what it is, that we do. I think that we haven't been, a part of the town committees for very long, and I just feel like we have participated in certain events, but I think we need to.
We are very young, actually. We are like babies.
Yeah.
Literally crawling, and that's why the logo contest was the idea, that people become aware, adults and children, so that people can participate from our town and see what we are about and what their views are. Because when we came in, even we didn't know what we are doing. We were figuring it out slowly and gently and trying to understand what we are supposed to do. So we welcome any suggestions, and that's one of the objectives of that forum that we are going to be doing at the library soon, that we want participation from people like us, from the town.
Yeah, because we have ideas that we bring, but obviously, having ideas from everybody in the town would make it a much more robust type of committee. So.
Just have two comments first. Thank you for the work that you do. I know it's a young board, as you said, in your infancy stage, but I think over time you'll build up that reputation of hosting great events and really bringing attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the town. So appreciate your work there. I know one of the duties that your committee has is to foster civic engagement, so I certainly look forward to future opportunities to get more people involved in our other boards and committees, and even town meeting, as we noted at the top of the meeting, not having enough people running for all the seats. So I look forward to that. And I will say I have great appreciation for being a young gay Latino growing up in this town. It's wonderful to see Juneteenth and especially Pride being events that you will be hosting in the future. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Samia.
Thank you. Just one quick comment. So in a few years from now, 2027, we'll celebrate our 300th anniversary.
Okay.
And there was a committee recently established, but I think what would be very important as well is to celebrate our diversity and make sure that all feel included. I think our town continues to change in diverse perspectives and backgrounds and ethnicities, and this, I think, would be a great opportunity as well. They'll have committees and subcommittees, but to exchange ideas as well, to foster inclusion, to reflect the community, who we are and who we're proud to be. So that's just something else to continue the great work that you're doing, but to bring that forward as well to help inform that committee as opportunities become available.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We look forward to seeing what other great things you come up with.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right, item number 7 is a meeting with Casey Bogan, Assistant Director of the Council on Aging, regarding dementia-friendly Shrewsbury. Good evening.
Good evening. So I'm Casey Bogan. I'm the Assistant Director of the Council on Aging here in Shrewsbury. I'm also the Dementia Friendly Shrewsbury Action Team Lead. So I'm here to talk about what Dementia Friendly is, what Shrewsbury's already done, and what we'd like to do to move forward. So Dementia Friendly, it means a commitment to supporting our community. So no community can ever be fully dementia friendly. It's just not possible, but by signing the pledge to be dementia friendly, it's a commitment to make continuous progress for Shrewsbury to be a welcoming and inclusive space for people with dementia and their care partners. Dementia often is not talked about, but 1 in 9 people have Alzheimer's dementia, and that is only one type of dementia. There are many others as well. So it affects a large scale of people in every community. So we have to advocate for dementia awareness so that people will talk about it and people can recognize the signs and support our community, their friends and family members, and making sure that they can age in place and be as independent as possible for as long as possible. And becoming dementia friendly supports Shrewsbury's strategic plan in 3 areas: engaged and connected for intentional inclusion and outreach to build trust in town government and services, exceptional for long-range planning and innovative and proactive customer service and smart, reliable, and robust municipal services, and thriving, community-oriented public health and safety, and comprehensive and compassionate social services. You can go to the next slide. So right now, Shrewsbury is pretty ahead of the game. So we have 2 memory cafes, both of which meet twice a month. So we have our Memory Lane Cafe held at the Shrewsbury Senior Center the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of every month. And we also have the Good Day Memory Cafe at the Shrewsbury Public Library held on 2 Fridays each month. So those are 4 memory cafes just in Shrewsbury alone, which is more than many communities. We also have some trainings under our belts already. So Holly and myself, Holly, the director of the Council on Aging, and myself have completed the Train the Trainer program for person-centered dementia care. So we can help our community better understand the symptoms and how to handle those symptoms and give people the best care at home. And improve the quality of life, both for those who have dementia and their caregivers as well. I personally am also trained as a Dementia Friends champion, so I can lead information sessions for people to become dementia friends. And those are considered information sessions, not trainings, because there's no quiz or anything. It's just an open conversation so people understand what dementia is, how to recognize it, and how to manage that on a person-to-person basis. So our dementia-friendly action team has been formed already, and we now have quarterly meetings. Our next meeting will be on April 30th. It's the last Tuesday of every 3 months. And we're meeting to stay on track with making progress and continuing to support the community and make sure that we're meeting their needs in this very important endeavor. So for the next slide, our upcoming, what we'd like to do, town employees will be invited to Dementia Friends information sessions, likely led by myself, maybe a couple of other people, particularly those who are public-facing employees, so they can better assist in situations where somebody might have symptoms of dementia that wouldn't be recognized if you didn't really know how it presents itself. The Dementia Friends info sessions are updated pretty regularly, and the Dementia Friends champions have regular meetings at least every other month, if not monthly, where they have updated information that comes out that is talked about, and also you can have check-ins as well as practice sessions so that everyone can give the best information we can. The Council on Aging has also met with Patty Sullivan, the dementia-friendly program director at Massachusetts Council on Aging, for suggestions on making the Shrewsbury Senior Center more dementia-friendly and more welcoming and functional for visitors. And that includes, updated signs, armrests. So we're planning to add arms to our outdoor benches as well to give more inclusive resting spaces for these folks. We're also working with the school department to have information sessions for students so they can better recognize these symptoms at home and maybe bring that to family members' attention and kind of nip things in the bud and make sure that people are getting the best care that they need. We'll continue to support our memory cafes and provide additional informational activities as well as programs that help foster brain health. We'll also continue to support the Walk to End Alzheimer's every year. And we'll go with our next slide. So the Dementia Friendly Pledge is our formal commitment to these efforts that we're looking to move forward with. It has to be signed by the action team leaders and at least one municipal leader and/or elected official. So that's why I'm bringing that to you today. And once we sign the pledge and we send that over to Patty Sullivan at the Massachusetts Council on Aging, we would be formally presented the certificate of Shrewsbury being dementia-friendly by a state official at the annual Massachusetts Council on Aging meeting. And the more people that understand dementia and its signs, the safer our community will be with those living with dementia. And it would support the mission of Dementia Friendly Massachusetts to make neighborhoods inclusive, welcoming those touched by dementia to continue to be active and contributing citizens in their communities. That's what I've got. Any questions?
Thanks so much for your work on this, and I also just wanted to mention that Select Board Member Conlon and Select Board Member Garcia both served on this task force to get us to this point, and I want to thank you both for your time, and then open it up for any questions or comments that people may have. Mr. Samia.
Just one quick question.
Sure.
We know we have a lot of seniors aging in place. As a few years ago, it was 8,300. We want to make sure that we talk about where all can thrive, so this is absolutely consistent with everything we've talked about in our strategic plan. On the action plan, how will that be measured, and how often, and gone through, and what will that be, annually, semi-annually, and who will do it?
So the action plan is formed by the action team. We do actually have an action plan that we have created and agreed upon. And that is something that gets sent over with the signed pledge to Patty, and it is posted on the Dementia Friends Massachusetts website for everyone to see. And it's really just a broad listing of what we plan to do to support people with dementia in our community. So there's no necessarily any timelines on it, but we do have a project plan in place as well that we are working on and will be reviewing before our next meeting as well, to kind of keep us on track with dates and timelines and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yes, just
Mr.
had
Garcia.
quick question and a comment. First, thank you, Casey, for leading on this, and I know there was a lot of work that was put into it across several months, so really appreciate you bringing this to us. And having served on the task force with you and Board Member Conlon, it's just been great to see this come to fruition. I was curious if you could share, I know you touched on it, how can folks at home become dementia friends themselves? As you mentioned, it's safer and better for our community as more people are aware of the signs. So
Yeah, so the Dementia Friends information sessions are always free. We do plan, once we get town employees as Dementia Friends, we plan to have probably a couple every year of information sessions at the senior center that people can attend. There is also an online resource at dementiafriendsma.org, and that shows info on what being a dementia friend means, as well as has a resource for both virtual and in-person information sessions that folks can attend.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for all the work that you've done. It's been really rewarding being part of the team working on this, and I'm so grateful for the dedication that we see from you folks at the senior center, and everything, your commitment to making sure that our senior center and our wider community are friendly to everybody and accessible to everybody. I know in our budget, we have some plans for some capital improvements at the senior center that help, are aligned with this initiative, and just making the senior center more accessible for everybody. And it's exciting work, and I'm very grateful to be part of it, but especially for all the work that you guys have done. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Question for you around training for first responders. I noticed that as part of the action plan. Is there anything more you can share about what that would look like?
Yep, so Patty is working directly with Sean Weigold, I believe, over for fire department to set up sessions for them to become dementia friends. She is reaching out to them. I actually just chatted with her today. So she is reaching out to him to coordinate those information sessions. There are also some trainings available through the Alzheimer's Association that are specific to first responders. So I will continue to try to advocate for them to take those up, but it can be a time commitment, and that's difficult with the schedules that first responders hold. But we will work forward on getting those done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, really important
Yep.
to make sure that we are being inclusive of everyone in our community, especially on the heels of hearing from our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. You know, it's about everyone, right? It takes into account race and gender and abilities, and
Absolutely.
it ties in nicely to to the initiative that we know that committee is undertaking to make everyone in our community feel welcome, and it's a place for everyone to be recognized and feel safe.
Yeah,
So thank you for your work on this. And this signing is item 10 on the agenda, and I don't know how many lines there are, but it would either be Select Board Member Conlon or Garcia that will sign as members of the task force.
Awesome. Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is under new business, and it is, no, that's not true. The next item on our agenda is not under new business. It's a meeting with the Director of Planning and Economic Development to discuss the Planning Board's preliminary recommendations for zoning articles relative to the May 20th, 2024 annual town meeting warrant. And I welcome Chris McGoldrick to the table to present to us and take us through.
Thank you, and thank you for having me tonight to talk about the zoning proposals that we have. So we have a number of zoning proposals that'll be coming to the select board. Planning board reviewed some of those at their Thursday meeting, but tonight I really want to just give another high-level overview of the MBTA zoning and the mandate and the proposal that we've been drafting in relation to that. And then, we'll take that high-level approach and then have some time left over for discussion. Obviously, it's a very complex mandate, so I want to leave time for that. We go to the next slide. So, a brief kind of presentation agenda. We're going to go over the MBTA compliance refresher, look at our surrounding communities review, do a MBTA zoning status update and timeline, talk a little bit about the public outreach highlights and results from that. We're going to go into our evaluation of sites and some draft zoning highlights, and then we'll have a brief summary and recap before discussion. So the board will remember that we talked kind of about the impetus for the MBTA zoning mandate, talked about the rising housing costs, especially in Massachusetts, as well as the historically low levels of new housing development. We talked about those impacts to vulnerable populations, elderly and young homeowners, and the housing cost burden, which is that 30% of income going to housing costs. We also talked about the concept of the missing middle housing and demand for a variety of housing opportunities in the community, not just single family and not just large apartment complexes. Next slide. So the MBTA communities legislation, it was enacted in January 14th, 2021 as part of the Economic Development Bond Bill, created a new Section 3A of Chapter 40A, which is the Zoning Act. A number of compliance guidelines were issued, first in August 10th of 2022. Those were subsequently revised in October of 2022, and even as recently as August 17th, 2023. So the compliance has been a little bit of a moving target. We've tracked that as we've gone and developed our proposal, and tried to tailor it to those revisions as well, to really put Shrewsbury in a good position with complying with the mandate. I think it's an important note to make that in March 15th of 2023, the Attorney General issued an advisory, specifically that the communities fail to comply with the law, subject to civil enforcement action and also risk liability under the federal and state fair housing laws. So we'll talk about some of the cons of not following through with the mandate, and in addition to these, but obviously there's a very strong message from the Attorney General on non-compliance with this. The mandate does require that by December 31st of 2024, Shrewsbury must adopt zoning to meet specific compliance requirements, and those requirements are available on the MBTA website that the state is hosting. Next slide. So again, in addition to the potential for legal liability, if not adopted, the town becomes ineligible for a number of grants through the state. There's currently 13 discretionary grants identified. That number has grown throughout the rollout of the program. And Shrewsbury currently is utilizing close to $5 million in grants related to that would be jeopardized by non-compliance. And it's important to note that that $5 million that we're currently utilizing, a lot of those grant opportunities always open doors for further funding sources in subsequent phases of work. A lot of times tying grants together one after the other, one for a study and then to implement the findings. So it's a really important piece to the work that we do and the level of service that we provide in the community. Next slide. So one of the key components, again, the compliance requirements are pretty complex, but one of the key components is this housing capacity requirement. Shrewsbury's capacity requirement is 1,497 units. It's important to note that the community is not required to actually construct those units, only provide zoning that supports for their development. And what we'll talk about is it's also important to note that that assumes bare land, so it's not necessarily new development units. It's looking at creating the ability to create that density of that number of units, not necessarily create new units. One of the more recent revisions to the compliance guidelines did open up an opportunity for commercial requirements. That was not allowed before. We're now allowed to do an offset of units of 25%. For Shrewsbury, with our capacity requirement, that's 374 units. So we are allowed to do a portion of the zone as mandatory mixed use now, which we'll discuss in a little bit more detail. And that reduces our multifamily capacity requirement to 1,123 units. Next slide. So again, just really driving on that point of the unit capacity not being new units. What it does is it looks at, if you look at the graphic, existing units are 2. It treats as bare land. So if you zone for allowing for a 4-plex, that's a capacity of 4 units, even if 2 are existing. That would work the other way. So if you have 4 existing and you zone for 2, only 2 of those units would count towards the capacity requirement. Next slide. So we did evaluate or take a review of some of the surrounding communities that are also subject to the MBTA zoning mandate, which was notably Grafton, Westboro, and here we're looking at Northborough, which is, I think, most relevant to one of our preferred choices for zoning. So Northborough is proposing a number of options for their district. They're also proposing them as overlay districts, but most notably theirs is on the border with Shrewsbury, close to the Christmas tree shops location. As you'll see in the next slide, we do see that they are zoning over existing density, which is a tactic that a number of communities have pursued. And you'll see in our proposal that we've also targeted that strategy. Next slide. So this is just a rough Google Earth view of where their zoning is proposed in those 2 locations closest to Shrewsbury. As you can see, they have existing housing there, as well as the ball fields for the New England baseball complex. So public outreach highlights. So we have been very busy in outreach to the public and to the community. I'm not going to go through all of those arrows, but you can see the path that we've taken, pretty extensive. We've done a number of community forums where we've met with the community and also done a number of MBTA preference surveys. We'll talk a little bit about those. We've done a number of board presentations to the planning board, to your board, as we've moved through this process from when the mandate was passed back January 2021. We've also maintained a website project page, as we do with all of our projects, which includes all of our information. And we try to make that as accessible as possible. And we've also done a number of direct email engagement to town meeting members. There's also upcoming public hearings, so we're currently before the planning board, where they give at their March meeting. We're going to continue that and leave those public hearings open, likely through to May, just to allow the community to engage all the way up until town meeting. So again, we're just going to keep that discussion open. There's plenty of opportunity to discuss this with the board. So looking at the survey results, so we used our new survey software, which I think was really helpful. A lot of the key results that we saw was comments related to redevelopment of abandoned, vacant, or underutilized buildings and building lots. We're not, again, as I mentioned, we were not originally allowed to include a commercial component, but we are now able to use some mandatory mixed use with that provision of the revised guidelines. But that was one of the key takeaways, that protecting the commercial component and the commercial properties in the community. There was a preference towards shorter buildings at the expense of less open space on the property, as well as looking at townhome and row house, again, at that very minimum of the allowed density that we can do, which is the 15 units per acre by right at 2 to 3 stories. And there was also a preference towards craftsman architecture. We also had a map feature, which I found really interesting. It allowed the community to drop pins on a map of the town, and they were able to leave comments related to those pins. So we collected a lot of information through that. Some of those comments were even outside of Shrewsbury, so we got a lot of feedback from other communities, or for other communities, that we could pass along. A lot of the comments were looking at proximity to public transit routes, as well as stations, highways, and intersections. There was a preference to preserve open space, which again is somewhat contradictory to the other survey response, but we'll talk a little bit in the language of how we've tried to balance that. And then many of the comments on areas needing redevelopment, again, was a key factor in what we saw on the map comments. And it was important to know that many of the identified areas were ones that we either evaluated or were looking at. So it was nice to see from this map that we were kind of on the same page with the community and our thinking as we were going through that evaluation of sites. So looking at the draft proposal, so again, just kind of a reminder on these key compliance criteria. So there's a minimum acreage of 50 acres, as well as that capacity requirement of 1,497 units. Doing some quick math, at 15 units per acre, which is our minimum density, you'll need to zone more acreage to make up that capacity requirement. So there's some kind of interplay of how that works. We did look at mandatory mixed use, which again is that 25% allowable offset, and it reduces our capacity requirement where we utilize that. Key to community goals from that survey, again, really looking at redevelopment opportunities of this zoning, utilizing the existing density, as well as preserving commercial components where feasible, and really looking at shorter structures, limiting density over open space. So we did identify and evaluate 6 possible districts that were across the community, and we'll jump into some of those. We'll talk about some of the ones that we evaluated, and we're going to end on what our department's preferred district is. So this first one is the secured financial parcel up in North Shrewsbury on the Boylston border, also known as 409 Boylston Street. It's important to note that this does not meet the capacity requirement with mandatory mixed use, which and it's short by 447 units towards that capacity requirement. There are currently 12 single-family homes on or within that proposed district. It would have a potential of generating close to 1,050 potential units. So that's a potential generation of 1,038 units. There's no mixed-use offset because there's no existing commercial there, so there's no need to include that. It's important to note there's limited existing infrastructure at this site. There's existing, it's an existing vegetated parcel, so development at this density would have a lot of clearing. And it imbalanced, so it was fairly imbalanced in terms of the regulatory benefit compared to the net units. Next slide. The next parcel we evaluated was our South Quinsigamond area. So this is the Shrewsbury Green, White City, Quinsigamond Shores area. This one also does not meet the capacity requirement as a standalone. It's about 688 units short. So this would be a net of 400 units because there's approximately 440 existing. These are kind of rough numbers that we were able to pull and would have to be refined later. But again, this one also has some limited existing infrastructure, although it is on Route 9. And being next to Lake Quinsigamond, there is potential for watershed impacts. And so again, this one we see as somewhat imbalanced in terms of the regulatory benefit compared to the net units or other potential impacts. Looking at North Quinsigamond, so this is our Quinsigamond Plaza, Buca de Beppo, and Eastern, all the way up North Quinsigamond up to Eastern Point condominiums. This one again does not meet the capacity requirement on its own. It's approximately 282 units short. Has the potential net units of 580 new units. This one similarly, or this one does not maximize the mixed use offset. So what this would do is you would only receive approximately 300 within the existing commercial district. So it leaves a little bit on the table, a little bit to be desired there. There's also, again, limited existing infrastructure along North Quinsigamond Ave, as well as potential watershed impacts with the proximity to the lake. So again, another one that's imbalanced in our opinion in regards to the regulatory benefit when compared to the net units and the other potential impacts. We also evaluated the Edgemere Drive-In, again, looking at that existing density and where can we, take credit for the zoning and developments that we've already done in town. So this is the Edgemere Drive-In parcel and the Village at Orchard Meadows condominiums. So this one also does not meet the capacity requirement on its own, so it would require looking at another site as well. This one has a potential net units of 1,575. Similar things. It's on Route 20, which has limited existing infrastructure, potential watershed impacts with the proximity to the lake. And again, it's fairly imbalanced in terms of the regulatory benefit compared to the net units. And then we also have our Route 9, which is Lake Street to Maple Avenue. We looked at this as the Chelmsford building up through Imperial Village Apartments in the Shrewsbury Credit Union area. Again, this one also does not meet the capacity requirement on its own with mandatory mixed use. It is a lot of underlying commercial districts. So this would have a potential net units of 835. And so we see that as, again, being somewhat imbalanced in terms of the regulatory benefit compared to the new net units. So our preferred district is the Route 9, Route 20 Cloverleaf area. The site characteristics here is it's approximately 173 acres. Has a large portion, 95 acres, which are residential under, as well as commercial under is approximately 78 acres. What that acreage allows us to do is to pursue the minimum density while meeting those capacity requirements. It also allows us to maximize that mandatory mixed use for defending the commercial and industrial zones that are under this district. We see that as beneficial and obviously could drive some redevelopment in the area as well. Considerations, again, we talked about that Northborough proposal. It is proximate, not adjacent, but is proximate to the Northborough proposed district. I have been in contact with the Northborough planner to discuss opportunities, at least preliminarily, of making sure that these districts are somewhat coalesced in any ways that we can kind of help to facilitate their use together across communities. It does have access both to Route 9 and Route 20, as well as, again, I mentioned the redevelopment opportunity. There's existing density on the parcel, so we have the Shrewsbury Commons, which is actually approximately 13 units per acre existing. And so, again, it's already pretty much, that's a good example of what density that 15 units per acre would look like. It's slightly more dense than that. There are water constraints to the Walnut Street parcel, which would limit development without some infrastructure to be included on some portions of this district. And there's also proximity to the Westboro Station. It's approximately 1.5 miles to the Westboro Station. I would not say that it's walkable in any way. There would be a desire for additional infrastructure to connect any community generated through this through that. But we'll talk again a little bit about the language that we're looking to pursue, some of that discussion for any potential project that does come along under this zoning. And this meets the goal of what we saw is reaching that minimum effective compliance. Not really trying to win any gold stars with providing for this mandate, just meeting the minimum compliance and then evaluating from there where we go. So the details are really in the draft language. So as I mentioned, for the mandate, there's the compliance criteria. It requires the multifamily by right at 15 units per acre. What we've done, by right zoning typically is one of the lower thresholds in terms of local control. So what we've done is through our design guidelines, we've really driven the language and provided some of our most aggressive design guideline language to really drive the local control where we can. So it's really, I think the detail here is in the language of what we're trying to do to generate projects that I think will fit with what the community has stated are their goals through this zoning. Important key points are that the underlying zoning is not effective. We're proposing this as an overlay. So any property owner that this is going over, they'll still be able to pursue their existing zoning. It's not rendering anyone non-conforming. This just provides them the opportunity to pursue the additional flexibility of this language, again, at the cost of adopting those design guidelines, which are extensive. We're proposing this at the maximum residential density by right, 15 units per acre. So that is the maximum that we're allowing, which is the minimum that we're allowed to do. So we're not winning any gold stars there, really just doing that minimum. We're proposing it as a transit-oriented development style, which is a planning concept looking at really driving transit, looking at focusing on development of a dense core surrounded around a transit or transit amenities or a transit station in some cases, and then feathering that out to mix density with the outlying areas. Again, I mentioned the design guidelines that we're doing. It's a more robust version of the Lakeway Overlay District design guidelines. We've taken that and added some language to that to again drive the projects that we want to see. It does require a number of studies, and I think this is a really key part. There's the regular, anyone familiar with the planning board knows the regular studies that an applicant has to provide. Those are automatically required. It's all the site plan typical requirements. But in addition to that, depending upon the project scope, we are requiring a number of additional studies for the larger projects. So depending upon the size and square footage of what's being proposed, we may be requiring a local and regional transit analysis. And I can talk about some of that language if we'd like to dig into that and what that would look like. For any project that's proposing over 50 residential units, we're requiring a school bus route analysis. Again, one of the challenges we see with these sites, we cannot, on private property, place a new or have the school buses enter the site. So we really want to look at where are the opportunities for school children in these areas to safely access the school buses. For projects that are also of a certain scale, we're requiring sidewalks and a mobility hub. And we can, again, dig into some of that language if we'd like to. But sidewalks on any of the public controlled streets and that mobility hub, which is looking at driving those multimodal transit opportunities. So again, we did the mandatory mixed use requirement if the underlying zone is commercial industrial. So we're requiring where the underlying zone right now is commercial industrial, we're requiring it to include a commercial component. Again, we've used some of that acreage where we're only able to achieve some of that offset, but we see that as a opportunity to again drive that commercial redevelopment through that mandatory mixed use requirement. We're also really incentivizing vertical mixed use over horizontal mixed use. So horizontal mixed use is similar to the Lakeway Commons or the Edgemere Drive-In, where you have separate structures. And that's, we're really trying to drive a more traditional vertical mixed use. A good example of that is like Mashpee Commons, or some of the other vertical mixed use where the uses are combined in a single structure. The vertical mixed use, we're using that as the by right zoning at the 15 units per acre. And then horizontal mixed use is required a special permit via the planning board. So we're not saying no to it, but we are adding additional local approval for any of that. So it incentivizes that traditional mixed use style. And then our wonderful timeline. Again, we did a lot of public outreach, really ramped up in the fall and winter of 2023. Did the public outreach and listening sessions. March 2024, which is now, we've done the draft zoning to the planning board and now to the select board. And this then goes to the May annual town meeting for adoption if the select board chooses to place this on the warrant. We are holding that October fall special town meeting if needed. So one of the things here is that it's important to note is that you submit compliance models to the state. They tell you preliminarily that it's okay. Then you pass the zoning and you have to submit it back to them again, and then they tell you after a more thorough review, yes, this is compliant or additional adjustments need to be made. We want to make sure that we have an additional opportunity to make any of those adjustments if needed to still remain in compliance by that December deadline. So looking to confirm that compliance in November, if not sooner, and then the deadline to adopt in December of 2024. And with that, we have a QR code here, really trying to engage with the community. I just wanted to mention briefly, we have a number of additional outreach opportunities. This QR code will bring you to our project page where you can sign up for those. And it also has the wealth of information that we have on what we've been doing for looking at MBTA zoning, but I just want to mention a couple dates if that's all right. So we do have a hybrid session that's planned for March 28th, 6:30 p.m. That'll be in the police station, but again, it's hybrid, so we'll have a virtual component to that. We have an in-person drop-in scheduled for April 2nd. Which is from 4:30 to 6:30. We'll be in conference room A, which is right across the hall here, for anyone who wants to drop in and ask questions. We'll also be providing a virtual drop-in session on April 19th from 10 a.m. To noon. We do have to take lunch at some point, but we'll have that virtual drop-in, so you'll be able to engage with the community or with the staff during that time period. We'll have a link to that. And then we'll have an in-person drop-in again on May 15th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. again across the hall here in Conference Room A. So again, we are committed to engaging with the community all the way through May, and even after the passage of the zoning, adoption of the zoning, which we are hopeful will happen. Even after that, we're happy to engage with the community. It doesn't end there. We're always happy to meet with residents and discuss any of our zoning initiatives that we have, so.
Thank you. I know I have several questions, but I will open it up to my colleagues first. Okay, you're kind of quiet.
I feel like I have comments more so than questions. I think that maybe just some comments, because I know that awareness is growing and people are tuning in. You met with us just about a month ago and went through a lot of this presentation absent the proposal. And so I think at that time, we were kind of vocal. Taylor Galusha was in the room. We said, you know, we need to really start ringing the bell. We put it in town newsletters. We've sent emails to town meeting members. But I think I just want to personally reinforce that there are these upcoming sessions. There's at least one more public hearing, and I think we expect and hope that there will probably be one more after that. You know, this is where things get a little clunky. I know people are saying, we had a workshop where you previewed a lot of this for us and you kind of told us what your thinking was, and some of us opined. And, you know, the next step in the process was for you to formalize what you were doing and bring it forward to the planning board. There's been no recommendations, there's been no votes, there's been no decisions. And so people don't want to believe that, but I'm hoping that this process that we're outlining will reinforce that we want to hear voices. It was unfortunate, there was a public hearing last week. Granted, the public hearing couldn't start till 10 p.m., but only 3 people attended. And so, again, we're willing to sort of make everybody available, but, you know, we want to ensure compliance to the extent we absolutely have to. So there are a couple of things that you said about emphasizing minimum compliance, and I think that that's important. I think that people want this to be as least disruptive as possible. And I know that there are people that would like it spread, but I think it is important for people to be informed about the opportunities for, you know, the mixed-use opportunity, which offsets the number of units that we're required to zone for or allow for, while also tying into our economic development initiatives, which, you know, we want to drive as much commercial revenue as possible to, you know, again, offset the residential taxpayers. So I just felt it was important. So thank you for allowing me to sort of go on record. And again, I think if residents have concerns, you know, reach out to you, certainly reach out to the planning board, but definitely attend these sessions, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and you know, part of having these more informal sessions is I know that, you know, a lot of the public hearings can be somewhat intimidating to some, and so we really wanted to make sure that certainly those are available to the public, the formal sessions, but providing that informal session, the ability to really just come in and talk with us. We want to make sure that that is available to the public, and just even regular office hours. We're happy to you know, drop what we're doing and have a conversation with the public. It's part of what I see as our duty and for our office. So we're happy to engage as what's comfortable to the public. So.
You guys decide.
Just a comment. Read a lot about towns that have decided not to comply. And the way the AG is right now, there is the requirement to comply, but we talked a lot about $5 million, but that's really the aggregate of 13 opportunities presently, right? That's not forever. That's not a cumulative total, nor does it represent going forward. So it's a current status and time. So if we don't do it, besides being not compliant with law and a whole host of issues with that, would lose millions of dollars that would still have to be absorbed. And that's the other piece as well. One quick question, just one thing that Teresa talked about. In terms of articulating a reason why we wouldn't sort of break this out over multiple properties, and you talked about this, but in a concise elevator speech, why wouldn't we do that where we can't fully recognize, or like we can with the parcel that you've put forward? Why wouldn't we mix and match?
Yeah, so I think one of the opportunities, and I think as we evaluated those sites, I think it goes back to that minimum effective compliance. What we see, again, when we look at the net units and the goals of the community, what this does is, the sites that we did evaluate, most of those, other than the one that we have as our preferred, don't meet that minimum compliance requirement. So you'd have to essentially choose a number of those or tailor them a little bit more, which may not be desirable. The benefit of our preferred site is that as a standalone, that does meet the requirements. It's the only site that we were able to. So it does provide one location that does meet the requirements and provides that kind of cohesion. It's also one of the least impactful in that way by having one site. The number of net units is lower than combining some of the other districts that were proposed, and so it really provides that ability to meet that minimum effective compliance.
Okay, thank you. And the other piece that could and should be beneficial is given what Northborough's doing adjacent to this property, which should help us maximize the value here as well, particularly with any mixed use, right? So that also was the unique opportunity here. And the other thing that you had said, and it's part of the considerations, that given the spirit of what we're required to do, it's 1.5 miles away from the Westboro station. So that's the other area. Understand the reaction of this. It's an overlay district where there are properties already, and it's looking at those as if they were vacant. So that's the other piece to help explain to people as well that this is an overlay district that in theory could provide X with the minimum compliance requirements, but it doesn't mean it will follow, and nor is there a requirement that you develop it. And those are the important pieces, I think, that over and over again to explain what it is and what it could be, but it's not mandated. We have to effectuate what it should be based on what the requirements are. So, okay, thanks.
Good. Ms. Conlon?
I have a question. So as far as the number of units going in, is there a requirement that a percentage be affordable?
So currently, we're currently capped at 10%. So you can do up to 10% as affordable units. There's no requirement to include affordability within the zoning. There is the option if you do economic feasibility analysis, which we are pursuing, just to provide the flexibility and the opportunity if we decide to go that route, and that could allow us to include up to 20% affordability component, depending upon the findings of that economic feasibility analysis. So if that feasibility analysis says, that a project could sustainably, work with 18%, that then becomes your cap. You can only go up to 18%. But in no case can you go over 20% of affordability for a requirement.
Is there an option, and do we have any ability, if, we have a percentage of these listed as affordable, to give priority or precedent to municipal employees and people that already live within the community?
Yeah, so there is, and I'm going to forget the exact term, but there is I believe the local preference is the term. There is a local preference option that's utilized through, typically comes up in a 40B style project, and the community can require that as a condition. We can look at including a local preference option and similar language for this zone.
I think that's all I have. Anybody else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I do have a comment, Chris. Thank you so much for this presentation. I was just curious if in future presentations, I think that you've done this in the past, if you could just give a breakdown of the $5 million in grants that we use, just so that folks can see how we use that money and how that benefits them and the town. And then I think I just want to piggyback off of Member Conlon's point about the affordability piece and the feasibility study. Just correct me if I'm wrong, if the feasibility study comes back that we can go up to the 20% affordable units, that could potentially help us make progress towards our 10% requirement that we need to meet, which would then allow us to have more control over 40B developments in the future.
Yep. So I'll need a little bit of time to look up the specific grants that accumulate in that 5 million. But in terms of the affordability, so that's correct. So currently we're capped at the 10%. So the economic feasibility analysis does provide an option to pursue either deeper affordability or additional percentage up to 20%, depending upon the findings of that feasibility analysis. I think one of the struggles with the 10% is that, again, when you're trying to make progress on your 10%, if you're only requiring 10%, you wind up, because there's other market rate that goes on outside of that requirement, that you wind up falling behind, and you actually lose progress on your 10%. So only by requiring an additional beyond that 10% do you ever make progress on that. And we're currently around 6%. I do think that the 20% and 25%, there are some communities that have pursued that. Again, under this zoning, we wouldn't be able to do 25%. But that aggressive pursuit of affordability has seen that communities have been able to achieve that 10% within a short period of time with a number of projects and aggressive policies for that. So that's one of the rhetorics has always been that it's not really achievable, so why pursue it? But in recent years, that has been achieved in some communities, so there is potential.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Yes, I have a few more questions, if that's all right. Sure. Is there, is age restriction allowed with this zoning change?
No, so there can be no age restrictions or restrictions against families in this zoning.
Okay.
Just specifically precluded.
Okay. Is there, may I ask another? Okay. Is there any idea of like sort of the bedroom count that would go in? We have a requirement for a certain number of units, but do we have any control over the number of bedrooms in those units?
So it doesn't expressly say that you can't, but that's frankly a slippery slope. I think what you wind up is it kind of toes the line in a way that, and DHCD, now EOHLC, has long taken a stance that limiting bedroom counts or affecting bedroom counts beyond what their requirements are could be seen as discrimination against families and not allow for them to be included on the SHI. So although it's not expressly precluded from doing that, I do think that would be one of those strategies that may run afoul of some of the objectives that we're trying to achieve.
Okay. All right. And I just have one last question.
Okay.
As far as when we were when the sites were being reviewed, what thought is there about traffic impact in like the different areas of town that these sites, that you were looking at?
Yeah, so we did look at kind of the existing infrastructure, as I noted, in some of those. There's the roadway. I said infrastructure, but a lot of that's looking at the roadways and where that's limited in a number of cases. I think one of the benefits of the preferred district that we have is it's near the Cloverleaf. It has access to both Route 20 and Route 9, which may distribute potential traffic from any project a little bit more evenly across those two routes. And again, potential for extending kind of multimodal, whether it's WRTA or VIA service. That is a location that's currently served by VIA, which is our local ride share, and providing some of those opportunities. So I think there's benefits in that location, as well as the proximity, although somewhat, as we mentioned, some of the challenges of actually getting to that Westboro station, but that proximity to the Westboro station as well, providing some opportunity there. So we did look at that, and I think our preferred location achieves that. In terms of potential projects, really I think the real traffic analysis happens at the project phase. Without having a proposed project, it's hard to really dig into what the impacts would be. And so any project under site plan would require regular traffic study. And then again, on top of that, depending upon the project scale, we've required those additional studies, whether it's the regional transit analysis, school bus analysis, or actually requiring multimodal infrastructure to be put in place.
You good?
Ask one more question.
I think so. Then that's it though, because then you've used all your coins.
As far as the roadways, we have Route 9 and Route 20 that border this property. And what control do we have over, that any like changes, multimodal, adding sidewalks that people can access the North Row crossing and things like that? Is there any control that we have locally over, modes of transportation, like being able to walk on those roads safely, anything like that?
Yeah, so in terms of Route 9 and Route 20, those are MassDOT controlled roads, so there's not a lot of local control. That said, I know our engineering department and our staff works regularly with MassDOT. We have a good relationship with them in terms of that infrastructure and working towards the community objectives there. So I know that is a relationship that is maintained. In addition, any of these projects likely would be noticed by MassDOT, and we could, as part of this, any proposed project under this zoning, would likely reach out to MassDOT to see what infrastructure, either planned or could be programmed, and if there's opportunities with the project applicant to provide some kind of incentives as well, that way of them providing some infrastructure or opportunities to collaborate with MassDOT to provide the infrastructure that's needed. So,
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay. Otherwise, you can just make an appointment. I think he said he'd be happy to talk with you. So I just wanted to thank you for this presentation. So we had a workshop. I think we spoke for probably 2 hours on just trying to understand the intricacies of this zoning. It's not easy. Your expertise is certainly something that I know I was looking for in trying to understand what's the best way to create compliance without going over what we need. And one of the questions that I have is around the opportunity for mandatory mixed use. And I thought I remembered you saying something about we have this one opportunity in May, and if something doesn't pass in May, then we can't get the offset. And I don't remember enough about what that was, but I'm curious.
So that's it's a little bit different. So that's not in terms of the mixed use. So that was in relation to the Chapter 40R. So that's one of the things that we're pursuing in the background, just to provide flexibility. So the 40R district, so one of the things that the MBTA zoning does allow is for communities to pursue 40R zoning in tandem with the MBTA compliance. If we're successful with our economic feasibility analysis, and that allows us to go up to 20% affordability, we can propose this as a 40R district. What that does is that provides fiscal incentives. We get essentially 3 payment benefits through that 40R zoning. So we get one, which is just for passing the zoning. You get a payment based on potential units. Then after the zoning is passed, it's a set district. Any units that are realized under that zoning, then you get paid, the community gets a payment of $3,000 per unit generated. And it also opens up opportunities, so any school children that are located in that district, there is a funding mechanism to support funding for school children that then locate in that district and offset some of those costs.
But if we don't pass this, if town meeting doesn't pass this in May, that opportunity does not exist for the second chance at the special fall.
Yeah, so what would happen is, so if we pass the zoning without pursuing it as a 40R district, we could still pursue what's considered a transition zone. So you go from the existing zone and you transfer it to a 40R. You lose that zoning incentive because it's an existing district. So that one-time payment goes off the table. You can still pursue, you would still be able to get the $3,000 per unit realized under an approved 40R district, and there is still the opportunity to pursue the school children offset, but that one-time payment.
How much is the one-time payment?
It depends. We'd have to do an analysis of, with their formula of what the actual units could be generated, and I don't have those figures
Okay, but you got them.
right now.
Do you mind if I ask for a clarification on that?
Not at all, because I could use it probably.
I want to be clear. Is there a deadline in May, or is it if we vote for it without the mandatory mixed use and then look to change it at a later time? So I'm trying to sort of say, for whatever reason, town meeting doesn't agree on anything and we don't come to any decision in May. I hope that's not the case, but help me understand, like, and then there's a special town meeting. We could still qualify for this, or is there a deadline that I'm missing somewhere in there?
Yes, so that's where the MBTA zoning is kind of complicated enough as is. The 40R is a layer that we're setting ourselves up to pursue if we can. But it really is a separate matter, and we'd have to have that conversation depending upon the economic feasibility analysis and those findings. So really the key point is if you pass zoning, if you have an existing zoning district, and you transfer it to a 40R district without any changes, if it qualifies, but you've already passed it, it no longer gets the zoning incentive payment. If you pass a new zone as a 40R district off the bat, there is that zoning incentive payment. So we don't have an existing 40R. If we pass MBTA just as is and we don't apply for it as also a 40R district, then we could still transfer it, but we don't get the zoning incentive because it's an existing district that we're just.
I like incentives, because there seems to be a lot of penalties, but we aren't talking a lot about incentives.
Well, yeah, and I if it's okay,
Of course.
I think that's maybe I think it's clear, but there's some, I think, perception that if we comply, the state's going to give us $5 million or $4.8 million, and what
No,
we're
it's-
saying.
Yeah, right.
I just want to be clear, what we're saying is this is funding that we're currently getting that we would lose. So there hasn't been any talk about the upside. There's
But
really
that's
just
not
sort
the
of
40R.
No. What I'm saying is, to your point,
Yeah.
that if there are any incentives to be had here, I think we do want to make sure that we are aware and we determine if we do want to actively pursue them, because there's not a lot of upside
Right.
to compliance. And so if
Correct.
there's some
Except for not getting sued.
incentive, I think we do need to better understand and make sure that everybody, residents and certainly town meeting, and I'm assuming planning board, understand as well.
Right, so, and I guess to simplify that, so there's only financial downsides to the non-compliance with the MBTA. There's no financial benefit to complying with MBTA. There's only a downside for not doing so. If we pursue a 40R, if we're able to pursue a 40R, we may be able to unlock a financial benefit for passing the zoning. And all we're doing is evaluating and taking steps to put ourselves in a position to pull the trigger on that if we say that that's what we want to do. If it comes to May and we say, we don't really want to pursue 40R at this time, or we're unsuccessful in positioning ourselves for that, we don't have to pursue that 40R.
I'm sorry if that was complicating, but at least it's not 10:40 at night. It's only 8:20. Unlike when I tuned into your planning board, it was quite late. I just for me, I think the proposed overlay district includes a Christmas tree shop, and we know something's going to happen there. And if we have this opportunity to have that included under MBTA zoning, when we know we're going to get something there anyway, and it's very well likely to be apartments, and it could be all apartments under 40B if we don't, go forward with this zone, to me, that's really compelling. I am interested in continuing to hear feedback from the public as well. What I was hearing at the planning board wasn't let's not comply, but thinking differently around the zone. And I think you answered very well this evening why this one zone is the preference. So I appreciate that as well. And hopefully the community does understand a little bit better the reasons behind. And I know that the manager had a few points that he wanted to make as well, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. I'd like to talk a little bit about this being a proven approach that we've seen in other areas of town, and a little bit more about the grants that we've received, and then why at this point I think the single site that we've recommended makes the most sense from my perspective. So I'll start with the grants though. So whenever I think about the grants, I know Mr. McGoldrick has put up about $5 million in grants that we currently have awarded to us that we're working through, have spent, or otherwise wouldn't have gotten in the current phase of work if we weren't compliant. I think maybe it's more compelling to look at two projects that we got grants just a couple years ago about, and those two projects are Centec North and Edgemere Drive-In redevelopment. Both of those projects, well, I'll start with Centec North. Of course, we know that was town-owned land, and over a number of years, we received about $5 million worth of grants for those projects, or that project there, and that's led to, without the buildings even being fit out, $250,000 in annual tax revenue that's coming into the town. So it's only going to go up from there. So not only should we think about the grants that we won't get and the additional grants that we would kind of parlay, as Mr. McGoldrick said, but what is the tax revenue that we are not going to be able to develop if we don't have these grants? And even more recently, the Edgemere redevelopment, we received a $2.3 million Mass Works grant. I assume some of that's probably in the $4.8 million, which we'll define. But that $2.3 million leveraged $75 million or so worth of assessed value that sits on site, and that provides $930,000 a year in tax revenue to the community. So I think we should, also look at that economic benefit that's recurring, that we're using these grants for a purpose, not in most cases. When I look at those 13 grant programs, we worked really hard to put ourselves in a position to be eligible for them, and one of the biggest areas is the Green Communities program. And it's been really meaningful of reducing cost in municipal operations by being able to make energy improvements. So there's a real compounding factor when we get these grants, because we're leveraging them to both build tax base and reduce other expenses. So when I think about the location and the approach, I think the approach is right because we're leveraging that mixed use development, and we've been really successful with that through two of our biggest redevelopment projects over the last few years. The Edgemere Drive-In redevelopment project and the redevelopment at the former SPAG site or Lakeway Commons, right? Those are proven approaches that we can understand and show, and I know we want to move more to a vertical mixed use than a horizontal, but I think we understand those projects, and it's created, pockets of community within the community, which I think is really healthy. And the single site for me, and I'm not a planner, but there's efficiencies in public infrastructure whenever we have been asked by the state or compelled by the state to comply with such an increase in housing within the community. If we were to spread that out over 3, 4, 2 sites, every additional site that we look to that's going to have high density, it takes a lot to get infrastructure and upsize water and sewer mains and get electricity to there, which we of course do on our own, and other utility services, manage stormwater, and think about the economic or the environmental impact. So that single site development and density, it reduces our infrastructure cost that we have to put out there as a community, and then also the recurring costs that we have in plowing and public works services and things like that. There is a true efficiency gained by a single site versus spreading it out throughout the community, knowing that even if it's spread out over 3, it's still going to be a lot of homes on each one of those sites. So that's why I think that this is a good option to really consider and think about over the next few months as we lead up to town meeting and make recommendations during that session.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments before we move on? No. I want to thank you. You must be doing this in your sleep at this point. If you're sleeping, I'm not 100% on that. Did you
Madam
have one
Chair,
more?
Yeah, so not to sort of continuously say this, but you have a webpage. So I direct a lot of people, here's a lot of the information. I just want to make sure that we're keeping it up to date. And these community forums or open sessions that we're having are not listed there. So they're kind of hidden somewhere else. Like everything that we could do to sort of put it on this page that you have, and even, while it's still active, if there's a way to just make it more accessible, because people don't necessarily know to go to this department and then this project, and then it's kind of under like grants and initiatives. So I just want to make sure that we're making it as accessible as possible. But I think that when people go to this QR code, they get to the notifications, and I think they get to like where some of the sessions are, but they don't get to that page that kind of provides them with all of that one-stop shop, if you will, information. So anything we could do to make that as efficient as possible would be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at the website to make sure that we're presenting that. We did directly email all of the town meeting members, so they should have received an email with all of those dates and the link to sign up for those. I believe we've currently received 2 sign-ups for those information sessions, so.
Just 2.
Just 2.
And I think, you're talking about town meeting members, but people who are running for town meeting, if you're running for the first time, these are great sessions to attend. It's a very good chance you'll get elected and you'll be the one making a decision come town meeting. So prospective town meeting members also should be thinking about participating.
I agree. And may I ask another question, not to belabor this, but I mean, if someone doesn't sign up, it doesn't prohibit them from coming. I think you're just for trying to plan, like if the space is going to be over capacity or something, that we plan accordingly, add more sessions, what have you. So,
Correct.
Again, if someone's like, oh, I didn't sign up for it, you can still show up. So if at the last minute, your schedule changes and an opportunity or availability opens, then I hope people will.
Correct. And if any of those dates don't work, or those dates or times don't work for someone's schedule, definitely pick up the phone and call our office, and we'll set up a one-on-one. I'm happy to.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I signed up. I hope I'm not one of the 2.
You're one of the 2.
I just
Leading the numbers.
I just thought I would, well, I know I didn't have to, but I thought I would, just to support the cause.
Come hang out with Chris, I guess. All right. New business. Item number 9 is to review and act on the road closure request of Andrew Truman, Town Engineer, for Oak Street in relation to the replacement of portions of the existing water main. So I'll ask you to come on up. Thanks for being patient.
Oh, no problem.
I know that we have a road closure request here, and it's a little bit complicated, so I know it's to deal with some water main breaks that we've been seeing recurring on Oak Street, if you want to fill us in a little bit.
So yeah, sure. It's again Andy Truman for the record. So yeah, this is part of our FY24 water main works. We're a little late getting going on it, but we have about $3.2 million worth of work to do. Oak Street is the main part of that. As you said, we've had a couple of breaks on the main there. It's from the 1940s, and unfortunately, it's the same resident that gets affected. So we're chomping at the bit now to get the contractor in to start the work. Originally, he was going to try and start earlier, but based on his current schedule, he's not going to really be starting until April 8th. So I think one of the requests I was asking was to break the moratorium, but we don't need that anymore. So we're going to be doing Oak Street. There's two portions of it. One is from Route 9, basically down to the Redland Curve. That's the portion that's had the breaks in the past one. So that's the one he's going to come and do first. And then the second portion is basically from Maple Ave to just past the school. That's an old main, down to where the tank is. So obviously it's a very busy road. It's not the most easiest to want to divert traffic, but we want to have the road closure on our playbook just in case we need it. We typically try and keep it just down to one lane, but if we get to a tight spot and we have to close it, we want to have that option. So.
I understand that you will be the person to coordinate the closures.
Correct, yep. So we'll start putting up the flashing signboards a couple of weeks before he starts. And then as we get closer, we'll do, social media outreaches, social blasts. We usually, send out code reds to the residents.
Buses, trash company.
Bus for
all
traffic,
that.
yeah. So what we're actually hoping is, we can do the bit with the school later in the summer, because he might demobilize and come back and do that when school's out. Would be one less headache way to do it, but we need to get that other section done.
Okay.
We don't want another break on that main.
Yeah. I know as road commissioners, we are sort of giving you the authority to make the decisions around that and to follow the correct procedure. I know we had a situation on Stony Hill where it didn't quite go the way that we
Yes.
thought it was going to, and that was because of the contractor. So I have every confidence that you'll manage this
Yeah, unfortunately, that
very
was a
well.
private development, so some
Right.
things we control. But yeah, certainly this one we will make, as much diligence as we can to keep everyone informed.
Any questions from board members? Yes.
A question, we have the winter road work moratorium. What's the impact of opening a road during the winter and then repaving it during like cold weather? I'm assuming that's the reason is like cold.
Yeah,
weather
it's usually,
down.
it's a couple of things. One is you just can't get hot top for bituminous pavement. Most of the plants close around about Thanksgiving. I mean, you can get it, but it's usually very expensive and has come a long way. And by the time it gets here, it's cold. So it's usually not good conditions, and then the ground's frozen. So we usually get a lot of issues with trenches settling. So it's typically we try not to keep anyone in the streets.
Is there a plan for mitigating any impacts that we may see with this work, being done in March?
It's not being done until April. We don't have
April.
to do the.
Yeah, he doesn't. He was originally, when we had our pre-construction meeting in February, and we were trying to get him out here quicker. But he was quite honest. By the time I got the materials and they've been delivered and fabricated, it's probably not going to be till April.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, we don't need to do the moratorium.
So-
We don't have to waive the moratorium.
Okay,
It's
I'm
gonna
like
be
looking
beyond.
at maybe an older,
Yeah.
It was originally when I filed it. We were trying to start this week. So
okay, all right,
It'll
thank you.
change,
Yeah, I
so.
think what I had printed out earlier was the,
it was correct, but.
It's okay.
gotcha, thanks.
All right, any other questions? All right, then I will take a motion.
I move that the board approve the road closure request and authorize the town engineer to coordinate the closure of portions of Oak Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Item number 10 is to review and act to authorize board members to sign the dementia-friendly pledge. As we said earlier, either Carlos, Michelle, or both of you will sign
I think
the
we can both sign
dementia-friendly
it.
Let's both do
There's
pledge.
no.
I don't know how many lines there are, but
Yeah, they both
Justin
do.
knows.
Yep.
Okay, great, and thanks so much for your work on that. So I'll just take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 11 is to review and discuss the draft May 20th, 2024 annual town meeting warrant. Mr. Miskar.
Yeah, so the plan, as we discussed through a number of the different items this evening, is to have a final warrant prepared for the select board's consideration at your next meeting in 2 weeks. And as is customary, we wanted to kind of preview what we have on the list for warrant articles. We are currently holding or have conceptualized 59 different potential warrant articles. And a great number of them are traditional recurring matters, but this year we have a number of zoning bylaw changes and a couple other unique matters that I would just like to take the opportunity to talk about. So I'll run really briefly through the big buckets of the traditional articles, which was be receiving any reports of town officers and committees. Something that is unique is providing seed funding to allow for the 300th celebration committee to get underway and begin covering costs and planning for the town's 300th birthday celebration. And then we go into a number of traditional financial warrant articles where we may need to pay bills from prior year or adjust the current operating budget. We will be making a deposit into the override stabilization account, which will continue prolonging the need for an override, although it will come in the future. It is a number of years off, and we see 6 clear years without needing to put additional funding in place. We, of course, will have the FY25 operating budget, and I'll take this opportunity to remind town meeting members and any interested members of the public that the Finance Committee will hold 2 public hearings and review each and every line item within the municipal budget and the school budget. And those will occur on Thursday, March 21st from 6 p.m. and then again at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday, the 23rd, and continue throughout the day. So plenty of opportunity to review the budget. We will develop and present our utility budgets as well, along with a general capital improvement plan, funding of our reserve accounts, and our utility capital improvement plans. We have a borrowing authorization request for improvements to the water treatment plant, and this would be to construct a PFAS treatment facility off of Main Street next to our water treatment plant. This is, of course, to ensure we're in compliance with the new federal regulations and remove PFAS from our drinking water. We'll continue, we want to make some changes to how we're funding the expansion of the cemetery. Whenever we received approval from town meeting last spring for this project, we had received an authorization to borrow about $1.7 million from that project. We have an opportunity to move forward with that project without needing to borrow, so that's always our preferred approach. That opportunity has presented itself because we have, through the final audit of the borrowing for the Beal Elementary School, we've received $1.3 million back from the state. So since we have this capital improvement need, we want to not have to borrow for the cemetery improvement project since those funds were already borrowed for the Beal School. So it's a cost savings initiative to keep the pressure off the tax rate. We've received opioid settlement funds, and folks may have seen in a couple articles in the newspaper about many cities and towns not spending those funds. We haven't been able to spend our funds because they're currently in a designated state within our accounts where we can't access them without town meeting appropriation. And all that has changed. For any future funds that we receive, we need to make a transfer out of free cash and put those into our special revenue fund so we can spend those. We do have a draft plan in place, but this will just be a financial transfer. Then we'll consider a number of project funding requests through the CPC for Community Preservation Act funding. There are 6 project funding requests. One is for affordable housing for $7,000 for a feasibility study at 11 Elizabeth Street. One is an open space and recreation project for $13,400 for a permanent story walk at the Lake Street Park. Another project for historic resources of $205,000 for the Mountain View Cemetery Historic Graves Preservation and Restoration Phase 2. An outdoor recreation project, $100,000 for additional funding for the Camp One parking lot. Outdoor recreation, $4,157 for wheelchair accessible ramp at Camp One. And then the final project is historic resources funding, $5,000 for the District 5 Schoolhouse ADA feasibility Phase 2. We, of course, also do our required statutory transfers of Community Preservation Act funding into the various reserve accounts and administrative account. Then a couple other projects that I'd like to talk about this evening. The first one being providing a potential grant of easement over town land at 414 Cherry Street. And also a grant of easement at Sewell Street to provide Zone 1 well protection around the new Sewell Street well that is recently commissioned. This is adjacent to 142 Clinton Street development project, and putting this easement in place preserves all the required DEP protections for 400 feet around our wellhead. So this is through partnership with GFI, this provides the greatest protection that we can for our drinking water wellhead, which we currently don't have in place. And we would also look to discontinue an easement for the Sewell well that we have abandoned and no longer need. We do have a proposal from the town engineer to accept a portion of Puritan Street related to the work where we added a cul-de-sac and terminated the road rather than allow it to connect to Route 20. So we need to lay out that way and accept it. We're looking to make various amendments to the zoning bylaw, many of which Mr. Goldrick has addressed through the planning board last week, but I'll just name them. We look to make amendments to our digital signage regulations, definitions associated with farmers markets, of course the MBTA zoning, which we've reviewed thoroughly this evening, adding a senior housing overlay district and regulating senior housing developments throughout the community, adding a revised definition for a brew pub, making certain amendments to the Lakeway Over District for nano breweries and microbreweries. The same with the Route 20 Overlay District and the Edgemere Village Overlay District. We look to expand the Campus Overlay District to land at 333 South Street to help hopefully encourage the redevelopment of the mostly vacant UMass administration facility that's located on that property. And then we're also looking to make a date change associated with the identification of the first formal adoption of zoning within the town of Shrewsbury. Previously, that was thought to be August 2nd, 1967, but through further research and understanding what minimum criteria are required to meet that definition, which is important for identifying various matters associated with lots and non-conforming lots within the community, that more appropriate date is May 18th, 1955, when the first dimensional zoning was put into place for the community. We're considering preparing a general bylaw to require the construction of any future utility poles and underground wires where they are currently not located to be underground. This is two parts. One, and most importantly, weather resilience and climate resilience, and two, aesthetics throughout the community. The Retirement Board is looking to make a recommendation to adjust the annual cost of living adjustment for the pension system. The board will likely remember that an adjustment was made recently, moving the amount of an individual's pension upwards by $2,000. Currently, only the first $14,000 of an individual's pension is subject to an annual cost of living adjustment. So it's quite a small amount, and the rest stays stagnant over the course of someone's entire retirement. The maximum amount that can be subject to COLA under state law is $18,000. And although they haven't voted, it is my understanding that the Retirement Board is considering moving it from $14,000 to $16,000. So it'll still be less than the maximum, but it's still a very small amount that's subject to a cost of living adjustment for the pension system. Also within the general bylaws, we're looking to make some alterations to the setbacks required for donation bins. Some of the current requirements absolutely prohibit donation bins from being sited on any lot. And we will be working with the Personnel Board to determine if any adjustments are required for the personnel bylaw. So again, right now, we're holding and considering 59 different warrant articles, which is a similar number to last year, and this will, of course, evolve over the next 2 weeks, and we'll be prepared to work with the board in signing the warrant, and then through public hearing process with the Finance Committee later in April.
Town meeting is May 20th, and based on this warrant, I would suggest people book May 21st as well, and maybe even May 22nd, if need be. So, this is a lot.
It is.
It's good, though. Important work to be done. Any questions or comments? We'll review this much more in detail as we move along through the process. Item number 12 is to review and act to set the FY25 active employee health insurance rates. So, let's see. All right, so these rates were approved by the West Suburban Health Group on February 15th, 2024, and the town's Insurance Advisory Committee has a meeting scheduled for Monday, March 11th, which has happened, to review and act on these rates. So it now comes to us, right?
The rates.
Anything else? They approved
Usually-
the rates, so do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll
as
just provide a
member
quick
of the
overview.
West Suburban Health Group?
Sure. So the bottom line increase required additional funding for the West Suburban Health Group is roughly 9.25% for the upcoming fiscal year. And there's a variety of adjustments that have been made to the various plans for the networks that are provided. And I'll just provide a brief summary of it. So we currently have 3 providers, Tufts, Harvard Pilgrim, and Blue Cross Blue Shield, and a number of options within each one of those, including high deductible plans. Tufts and Harvard Pilgrim, of course, are merging into .32 Health, and that has required some even further internal adjustments for this upcoming year. So the plans with the highest adjustments are set at 12.34% year over year, and though that is individuals currently within the Harvard Pilgrim plans. The vast majority of Shrewsbury employees subscribe to either the benchmark or the high deductible plans through Blue Cross Blue Shield. All of those plans are being increased by 8.5% year over year. And then there's a more modest adjustment to the Tufts health plan because it is already the highest cost plan, and with its merger with .32, it is going up roughly 5.9%. So we have carried a little over 8% annual increase within our operating budget after detailed analysis of current subscribers and allotting for reasonable additional employees joining the plan during this upcoming open enrollment.
Any questions? Okay. I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve the fiscal 25 health insurance rates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so for item number 13, it was to review and act to approve the insurance opt-out program to begin in FY25, but the Insurance Advisory Committee voted no, so we do not need to take any action, or do we have to vote no? Just let it go.
Just let it go.
Okay. Item number 14 is to review and act on the recommendation from Selco for a streetlight request for Abdullah Al-Duwajali at 92 Green Street. And this one was a little different, right, from what we're used to. Do you want to provide a little
Yeah.
background on that? Justin, I know you were following up.
Yeah, so this gentleman had requested a street light, and that appeared on the board's agenda for the first meeting in February. The request was sent to Selco for review. Usually these types of requests involve adding a new light, but Selco was able to determine that there were 2 poles that were already existing in very close proximity to each other with lights on them. There's another pole closer to this gentleman's house that does not have a light, so they're going to take one light and move it to the other. So overall, no net increase in terms of what the town pays for providing electricity to the lights, just a relocation of the light. I did send the proposal to the gentleman. He thought it was reasonable and fair. So it's before the board to vote whether to accept that recommendation. if the board votes yes, we would send it back to Selco, and then Selco would proceed with the relocation of the light.
A lot of back and forth.
Yes,
Let there be light.
yes.
Okay.
Government at its best.
All right, I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, item number 15 is to review an act to establish a sustainability committee. I know this has been on our agenda a couple of times, and we have a draft charge for a sustainability committee to consider this evening. So I would like to entertain any thoughts that people might have or comments.
I mean, we talked about this at our last meeting, and I read it after that meeting in more detail than I had prior to that earlier meeting. I know that you and Mr. Samia, both together and individually, have had several conversations with Tipping Point, and I think that this is a reasonable way to move forward, both to support the cause, and I do agree with helping to inform residents of what they can do from an environmental and sustainability perspective, and to collaborate with the town and town departments. I'm glad that this is not something that is sort of forcing residents to comply with something. We're not sort of forcing requirements on them, but we are helping to inform them and engage with them, and again, supporting the strategic outcome area of sustainability. So, long-winded way of saying, I think it's reasonable to move forward.
Just to clarify, I would want us to all be looking at the draft with Mr. Samia's edits, because they were,
Uh-oh.
it's just got green. Sorry, I fell for it. They're mostly just adding the word Shrewsbury in several places and
Just clarify.
clarifying a few places. We added some verbs.
Yep.
But I think that would be the correct draft to consider this evening.
The only thing that left open, bracketed, how often would we want the sustainability committee to present? I had semi-annually, in brackets, it can be annually. That's just a question. Whatever the pleasure of the board is for that. And the other thing, if I may, that, and Beth, you took the pen on this, and you and I had office hours. Tipping Point came, and we heard what they were looking for, and they had some ideas on paper. Had a lot of conversations with Tipping Point, a lot of great conversations, collaborations leading to the CARP throughout time. I think this really does reflect what we heard that day. And I think it's also, Teresa, to your point, it's about informing the public. It's about, I really heard when we met with Tipping Point last time, it was to provide information to the public, right? And about rebates and grants, and even presented that day that they didn't know that grants were available and they had purchased the wrong dishwasher or something like that. That it's really to provide information, as well as an opportunity for a think tank, right? Where they have a resource to go to, where members can go to in the sustainability committee. And the duties here are pretty clear, and that was the other sort of fix I did, just putting that these are the duties. But I think it was a really good draft, and there's just, I think it's consistent with what we heard and responsive to what we heard, and also helpful for the community. So hopefully everyone feels the same way, but I think you did a nice job on it. And yeah, it's mostly just clarification points.
Yeah.
Can't help
Sorry, I
myself
missed
sometimes.
this one.
It's very similar.
I stand by what I said. I think it's good.
Ms. Conlon?
I support the adoption of this. I think it pairs nicely with our municipal climate action resiliency plan, and it aligns with our strategic plan goals of sustainability, and I think that, it's a good initiative. And I think as far as how frequently they report or present to the select board. We heard from the DEIB committee tonight, like they're new and they're just kind of getting their feet underneath them, and maybe starting with an annual report. I feel like, if we ask them to come present to us in 6 months, it may be a little early for a new committee. And there's always an option, if I'm correct, for a committee to come and present to us off cycle, right? Is that, so they, at any point in time that, so as far as, I just have a question, as far as, staff support of a sustainability committee, is there any plan or idea of what staff support they may need, or, would it be somebody regularly at the meetings or just as needed?
It would be more of an as-needed basis. We'll provide them all the due staff support that they need to facilitate their meetings. We do look to have Louise O'Neill lead our climate action resiliency plan work, and that's a good connection into this group, but it wouldn't be like staffing that from her going to every meeting or anything like that. But certainly as needed where coordination makes sense, we'll do that.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. As I mentioned at the last meeting, I support the adoption of the Sustainability Committee. I think that it'll be a good resource for folks at home who want to become more sustainable themselves, to look at different ways and opportunities that they can do that. And I think it pairs well with our sustainability goals as a community, as outlined in our strategic plan and in the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. So I look forward to, if we adopt it tonight, to seeing what the committee has to suggest to the community. I also would be in favor of annual reports, at least initially. I think that makes sense. And then just one thing to note in the membership, I do appreciate that there will be one member of the committee that, again, assuming that we adopt what we have here, that'll be a high school aged student. I think that for young people, speaking as the young person on the board, as one of the young people on the board,
Aren't we all?
What are you trying to say?
I know that climate action and sustainability is something that's on the forefront of our minds. And I think we've seen that with some of the actions that's been taken at town meeting in the past few years. So I'm thankful that that's in there. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I support this. I think that it's a nice bridge between the public and the municipal CARP. And I think we have many passionate and smart neighbors who would be more than willing to donate their time and their talents to furthering sustainability initiatives for their fellow residents. Again, I think it's really important to know what you said, Teresa, that this is not about forcing compliance. It's about offering opportunities to educate and to ensure that resources are available to people who are maybe trying to do some sort of a heat pump upgrade in their home, and it really is, there are multi-steps, and it is nice to have someone who's already gone through it, be able to offer that kind of resource and support. So just for people watching at home, this draft does ask for a 7-member committee appointed by the select board, and they would be appointed to staggered 3-year terms because this is a new committee, so we want to make sure that not everybody is going to be coming up to the end of their term at the same time. And that 7th member would be a Shrewsbury High School aged, or Shrewsbury resident aged junior or senior student serving a 1-year term. And that you need to be a resident of the town of Shrewsbury to be eligible to be a member of the Sustainability Committee. To line up well, we would, June 30th. So we aren't looking to appoint this committee until probably maybe a month or so from now, start getting the letters of interest. And then we'll be ready to appoint so that the date coincides with the June 30th.
Correct.
So we can kind of work backwards on that.
Yeah.
And broadcast that out to the public once a decision's made. Okay. All right, so then I will take a motion.
Motion to establish a sustainability committee with a charge as amended, drafted and amended by Mr. Samia.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All right. So that brings us to correspondence. So the first item of correspondence this evening is a letter dated February 27th, 2024 from the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission regarding our FY 2025 assessment schedule. This is something that we pay annually for the services that we receive being a member of Central Mass Regional Planning. Item 17 is a letter dated February 29th, 2024 from the Central Massachusetts Mosquito Control Project regarding Form SRB1. Again, it's our annual sort of payment for the services provided by the Massachusetts Mosquito Control Project. Item number 18 is a letter dated March 4th, 2024 from Todd Baldwin, Senior Civil Engineer, regarding the John Street betterment request. And I will note that we are at step 4 of the betterment process. So once engineering has a more comprehensive design, they will provide updated cost figures to the select board. And there will be a second vote by the residents at this time where a majority must vote to proceed before the board can recommend an article be added to a town meeting warrant to convert John Street, which is currently a private road, to a public way. Item number 19 is an email dated March 5th, 2024 from Alexandria Martinez, Management Analyst, regarding the Shrewsbury Resident Assistance Program update. And this is good news, right? Because we voted about maybe mid-January, I guess, to put in place a resident assistance program using the $100,000 that we had set aside in ARPA funding to help residents who are in need of assistance with utility bills and or rent and mortgage payments. And there is a application form available on the town website. We ask that residents who are seeking assistance would provide us with some information and fill out that application, and then they are eligible for up to $2,000 in rental or mortgage assistance and up to $1,000 in utility assistance. And so Ms. Martinez writes to say that she processed the first round of payments and on behalf of some eligible applicants, and that totaled $5,894.56 in assistance. And so that's really good news. And I also received an email from a resident who was kind of the one who sparked this whole discussion, saying that she had received help, and for this month, she, you know, could breathe a little bit and kind of get her feet underneath her. So those are the kinds of things that I think local government provides to people that is often unseen. And it's always those people who need us most that don't even know that the resources exist for them. So I would encourage people that have hung in with us this long and are still watching, if you know someone you think could benefit from some assistance, to please check out this program. And then we have some ZBA decisions. Item number 20 is a ZBA decision of February 26, 2024 for Frank Panarelli for a special permit for property located at 19 Whippoorwill Drive. Item 21 is a ZBA decision of February 26, 2024 for Rainan Rash for a special permit for a property located at 19 Shady Lane. 22 is another ZBA decision from February 26, 2024 for Raja Raghavan for a special permit for a property located at 62 North Quinsigamon Avenue. Item 23 is a ZBA decision for February 26, 2024 for Michael Connors for a variance for a property located at 779 Hartford Turnpike. And then our last item is number 24, a ZBA decision from February 26, 2024 for Tavitt Realty LLC for a special permit for a property located at 504 through 512 Boston Turnpike. That brings us to the end of the agenda. If no one has anything else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good evening.